The whole nation sat in shock last night as we watched Richard Madden stop a suicide bomber on a train bound to London Euston. The intense opening scene, something like a domestic Jason Bourne film, dragged on for almost 20 minutes, but we were all in the hands of director Jet Mercurio. Gripped as every second passed as Nadia's, Anjali Mahindra, thumb trembled over the detonator. The opening scene of Bodyguard was all too real and the message all too familiar for a country whose terror level threat is currently at severe. Yet, the authenticity of the show is what makes it a truly terrorizing thriller. Scottish-born Richard Madden, most notably recognized as Robb Stark from Game of Thrones, plays David Budd, an Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran turned specialist protection officer in Bodyguard. Bravely, Mercurio's Bodyguard directly addresses the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan and respectfully raises huge awareness about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. He is a former SOLR struggling to cope with the effects of PTSD, but is no James Bond character. The brutal tour of Helmand province in Afghanistan has scarred him for life mentally and physically and cost him his marriage to his wife Vicky, played by Peaky Blinders Sophie Rundle. And who does he resent for it? The politicians that sent him there. The huge twist comes as David is promoted to protect the Conservative Home Secretary, Joanna Montague, played by the amazing Keely Hawes, who refuses to apologize for supporting military action overseas. Despite the usual dislike that comes with an overpowering and unpleasant boss, there is something about this relationship which is heading the direction of something dark and sinister. What could possibly go wrong? Mercurio is behind the likes of Line of Duty and Boss, and his characters are never what they first seem. Joanna explains to David she wants to be in a position to help other people. However, something about that seems awfully hard to believe. In the wake of recent terrorist attacks, she is campaigning for a bill known as the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 208, which would increase surveillance powers for the security services. Joanna also appears in Andrew Marr's The Andrew Marr Show to speak about her foreign policy proposals in the Middle East. It is unclear whether this is some sort of leadership bid for the weak PM, but it would not come as a huge surprise. The cameo appearance from Marr adds to the show's creepy authenticity. Not to mention she is described as a sociopath by her PA Chanel, Stephanie Hyam, who was fired after spilling coffee on her. Chanel then tried to expose all to a journalist who frustratingly told her to come back with more concrete evidence. By the end of the first episode, it was suggested that David may take things into his own hands, ending Joanna's life and himself for good, meaning his wife Vicky and the kids get his pension. Speaking to former military colleague Andy Ipstead, Tom Brooke, at a Veterans for Peace meeting, David refuses to seek help for his PTSD. Instead, he reminisces with Andy about the time they said if they ever met the people in government they would not hesitate to shoot them. In true Mercurio fashion, the camera then cuts to a non-dialogue scene of Bud sitting on his bed, in non-uniform clothes, loading a gun, before cutting again to Bud at work the next day, greeting Joanna as she exits an elevator. Not only did this huge cliffhanger end the first episode, upon reflection, there were numerous subplots which have opened a huge can of worms. Who actually is Chanel and what does she know? And who on earth was the chauffeur who picked her up twice? Is Nadia okay? What happened with Vicky and David? Please Vicky, will you just have the chat with David he so desperately wants? Is David seriously considering Joanna? Although Bodyguard is not a true story, it is set in a world that is very, very real. The second episode airs tonight at 9 p.m. on BBC One and viewers should be prepared. It is going to be another 60 minutes of seat gripping and barely breathing. Bodyguard airs tonight at 9 p.m. on BBC One and every Sunday thereafter at 9 p.m.